Hi, this is Valerie Kio, and it is August 12th, 2015. And what I'm going to talk about in this video today is dealing with systematic abuse, human rights abuse, and racism by the Canadian government. And one of the reasons for discussing that today is in regards to dealing with some legal proceeding against some Canadian municipal officials. Those in certain local divisions, municipal divisions in Toronto, Municipal Licensing Standards, Tracy Cook, who is the Executive Director, and Mark Strager, who is the Director of Investigations, among others. Now, the reason why I feel it's absolutely necessary to talk about this publicly, and you can also follow along on my blog. I just put up a recent article today because I believe in order for the public to believe some of these things that I'm saying about these people is to follow up, to have some kind of visual demonstration of it. So actually, it's not a major thing, but it's necessary. So sometimes the corruption is not something that is sensational, as far as something that, say, what happened in the federal level, whatever. Sometimes municipal corruption is corrupt, but it doesn't get that same sensationalism. You may not even see it in the media. However, if you come across it, then it should be exposed, and that's what happened. I came across corruption by these municipal city officials, and I decided to expose it on my blog. I also decided to take it a step further and lay private charges against them. And of course, not surprisingly, those charges were blocked. Now, I have to say that the root cause of that is systematic racism. At the basis of that court's decision, which is All City Hall Court House in Toronto, is the basis that a black woman should not be laying any criminal charges against these white people. They're all white. And so there is racism involved. There's systematic racism involved. And that's one of the reasons why I'm glad I have access to the media, where I can do my own part in dealing with systematic racism in Canada, because it is an abuse. It's a human rights abuse. And it's not enough to say that Canada is hypocritical on the world stage as far as its country's human rights abuse, as far as targeting specific groups of people and denying them their basic human rights, as well as denying them their constitutional rights, their civil rights under the Canadian Constitution. So that's what's happened. I only had one of the charges successfully laid today, and it was not against any of those city officials. It actually was against one of the property owners, one of the landlords, Samson Bashir. I was successful in getting one of the criminal charges processed against her. However, I was extremely disappointed in the manner in which the overt racism was evident at the proceeding. I attended that pre-uncut hearing, and I was there for about 6 hours. And when we took a break for lunch, and the Justice of the Peace asked the Crown Attorney if she had any submissions that she was going to make, she had the audacity to say that she had prepared her summation prior to the hearing. So at the end, I pointed out to the Justice of the Peace that there was a presumption of bias on the part of the Crown to not even rely on the evidence at the hearing as far as her conclusion about whether or not to proceed with the charges or not. Obviously, there's a presumption of bias if she prepared her submissions prior to even having the pre-uncut hearing. That means she made her decision before she even entered the courtroom and hear the evidence from the witness, the informant. So that's one of the problems. The other problem was the JP telling me that I needed more evidence against those city officials. I pointed out to her that some of the evidence, which a trial would have allowed, because in order to gather evidence, it takes some time, okay? And one of the reasons why it takes some time is getting other city departments or whatever it is to release information that they have. And sometimes when you release the information such as the Freedom of Information Act, you don't get all of it. I remember speaking with one of the accused, Captain Wendy Rome, and she was insisting you need to request to gain under the Freedom of Information Act new information because it doesn't seem as if you have some of the latest ones. Well, I had to remind the JP that this was a pre-uncut hearing, and I didn't appreciate if it was conducted as if it was an actual trial, and she got mad. She goes, sit down, and I was really upset. But I was able to hold my tongue, my anger, whatever. But she kind of gathered herself and decided that she was going to process one of the charges, and the Crown was upset. You could see that she had personal interest in none of these charges going through, and that's when I could see the depth of the conspiracy. I know the JP also was involved in the conspiracy and the court because it's all part of the systematic racism that exists. But to see the Crown, that's not the job of the Crown. The Crown's job is just basically to present evidence and leave it up to the court. And I also wanted to talk about what happens when individuals, just private persons, citizens, want to proceed and exercise their constitutional rights in the courts and lay these private charges. How they're treated differently, how their matters are treated differently, and how they don't have the same respect as when the charges are laid by the police or the Crown. Okay, and one of the ways they're treated disrespectfully is not for them to go through this ridiculous process of having a pre-uncut hearing, which is treated very much like a trial. And we know that JP's power and jurisdiction are very, very much limited as far as their role in hearing evidence. Okay, that's why you have judges that actually conducts a trial in most cases. Okay, because they're the one who are legally authorized to interpret the law and things. JP's does that too, but what they actually do at the pre-uncut hearing just is really, really, really disturbing. They really act like they're judges, and it's not even a mini trial, it's a full-blown trial. The only problem with that, there's only one person at that trial, the informant. So there's no side of the accused, and so you have to sit there and give evidence that should have come up at the trial before they make their decision about whether or not it's going to proceed to a trial. Now, I understand that they have to gather some evidence because otherwise people would abuse the process, but they themselves are abusing the process. And in that process, they're also abusing people's rights under the Constitution, okay? And so private citizens are treated unfairly by the courts when they want to proceed with charges. If you're a private citizen and then you belong to a particular group, a disadvantaged group, you can come up against many, many roadblocks, many ways in which the court will try to prevent you from exercising your rights or even recognizing your rights. And I think that's what happened in trying to go after the city official. But it's not over yet. If, as I stated in one of my videos, if I have to now, this is like a catalyst. This Priyanka hearing is acted like a catalyst for change. So if I have to use this as a stepping board to bring more international attention to what is going on as far as systematic racism and corruption in the Canadian courts against minorities, or just dealing with corruption in general by Canadian government officials, city officials, because you have to understand that its role on the international level is grossly misrepresented. It's these people who represent Canada overboard. It's not really telling the truth about what this country is about. Okay, and somebody needs to speak out about the lies, the way the society is set up. And so I'm glad, as a blogger, as somebody who is in the media, alternative media, has the opportunity to expose this crime against humanity, these human rights abuse. I could not get over the fact how personal this Crown had taken this this matter. You could see that she had some kind of vested interest in those charges not proceeding, and for the JB to be telling me that it's ridiculous for me to even want to accuse the court of being involved in the conspiracy, which I kind of come out and say, and she was so personally offended by that. But you know what, I was also personally offended when I realized that, okay, I have been a witness to these crimes that has been committed by these persons who are in positions of power, who has abused their power, abused the public's trust in their office, and who continues to do that. So if anybody is abusing the process or disregarding anybody's rights, in my opinion, it was the court. They did not recognize the criminal actions of those city officials. They did not want to proceed with charges against them. She's actually telling me that if I gather more evidence against them, maybe I can continue with the prosecution against them. I told the woman, this old woman, and you'll have to follow my blog to get the names of the JP and the Crown, because right now my mind is like, I've had to deal with so much information today that my mind, I can't remember their names. But if you go to my blog, Canada Human Rights Abuse Exposed, you will find their information in there. And so she was saying that there was insufficient evidence to proceed with these charges against those city officials. And truly, I do not know why she wanted conclusive evidence against them as far as gathering all the evidence that exists. That's going to take time, requesting that and things like that. They only need sufficient evidence on the charges to proceed. Okay, and I think I did that. And the basis of it is the fact that those city officials, I wanted to establish that the landlords were involved in illegal actions, and that illegal actions were condoned by those city officials. They were aided and abetted by them. They were protected by them. They still continue to act in an illegal manner, and I don't think that they are going to stop until all of the evidence that exists against them comes out publicly, where now the court of public opinion can view it and say, okay, something is wrong here. Where are these people still occupying their position when this and this is wrong? One of the first evidence I released on my blog today was a picture of the house, the rental property that the landlords are renting out, and also listed beside it another picture of a typical single-family dwelling house, not unlike it. so the public can have a visual image. And then I'm going to release more documentation over the next days, weeks, and months. One of the first documentation I'm going to release is from another legal proceeding against them, which has established that these people have no legal rights to be doing what they're doing, based on the Ontario government regulations as far as that particular property. It was established in that legal proceeding that they had more than 3 rental units in that house, and so the government of Ontario only allows 1, and they don't usually allow more than 2. So if the number hits 3, it's automatically illegal in all municipalities, not just Toronto, but all municipalities in Ontario. So I had to present the physical evidence publicly. And I stated also on my blog that evidence that I requested under the Freedom of Information is still being suppressed by Mark Straga and MLS and all of those things, but I still hope to get my hands on more evidence. And I don't want to dismiss the fact that I'm also a personal witness in this, so I'm not just presenting these evidence as hearsay. I'm also aware of the evidence against these people. Okay, so the fact that I have this physical evidence against them, which the court is reluctant to accept, still asking for more evidence. Like, what does the court want? You know, it's not even a trial. I am sure that if it was a trial, if it had gone to a trial, and these people, their own testimony, for instance, one of the evidence I released on my blog, that's going to convict them of, if they ever say that that is legal as far as the property, when it matches up against other property, if you use it in that manner, against the way that it should be used legally, then you're going to say for yourself that the evidence is against the city official for acting corruptly in that matter. Now, it wouldn't be a problem if this was just an isolated case. I myself was reported against on Mark Straga last year in another video. So it's not something that he has done. It's not, this is not an isolated case against him. So this man has a pattern of acting corruptly in regards to Toronto City landlords, which is what this particular hearing was about. And I've stressed in my other videos that as a private person, if you have witnessed a crime committed, even if it is by the police or by city officials, I don't see why you can't try to exercise your rights, even though they're going to block you and prevent you and come up with all kinds of reasons why you should not proceed. Do what you are legally obligated to do against those persons. There is no transparency in Canadian government. It's just full of corruption, whether it's at the local level or at the higher levels, provincial, federal levels. Corruption is the order of the day in Canada. Now, when this corruption is affecting the rights of persons or groups of people, then it becomes an international concern. Then it becomes a human rights concern. So it's a human rights concern right now when a person of color cannot go into the Canadian courts and exercise their rights under the so-called Canadian Constitution of Charter of Rights and Freedom, so-called guaranteed rights and freedom. It's mocked, it's ridiculed, simply by the way that these judges and these JPs view those persons as if they're some alien from some other alien planet. And that's one of the reasons why I fight so hard, because I'm the mother of 3 children, and I would like to see it a little less difficult for them, a little bit more easier for them in this country against systematic racism. So that's one of the reasons why I fight, because it's a very ugly thing to come up against. It's a very unjust system, because we're all human beings and we're all entitled to the same rights. And I hate to be the prophet of gloom and doom, but nobody else is saying what I'm saying. Everybody's all silent about it. You know, I put up on my Google Plus page last week trying to get support from the Black community as far as protesting in front of one of the corrupt police divisions, the 11th Division Police. And I contacted groups such as Black Lives Matter, which is a new group around. I contacted some other black groups. None of them would join in solidarity with me as far as even protesting publicly against the police. That these very groups are talking about racism against the black community, and at the same time they're so divided. Like, you have to understand how it is that they're able to do these things against our community. When we go up against them individually, it is extremely difficult. But if we are more united as a community, then they will think twice about abusing our rights. So we have that issue where we're not divided. And it's very sad, because black males in particular are the ones who are mostly targeted by the Toronto police, by the Canadian police. And I checked my email today, and I actually had a response from Mr. Baptiste, I think his name was, Darren Baptiste. He's from one of those groups, and he was apologizing for not getting back to me earlier. And I had sent him a very angry email yesterday when he had responded about the having, joining up with the protest in front of the police station. So I sent him this angry email yesterday, and so he responded and apologized and, talk about how we can work together. But we really don't work together as a community, and that's really sad. So when you're taking on these issues, whether it's the courts or the police or whatever, and if you're doing this individually because you have no backings from your community, it's much harder. It's much harder to do. But at the same time, I am not backing down. It's a job that needs to be done. And so I noticed also today I had difficulty accessing my blog. It must have been all those things I've been saying about Google, as far as my videos being censored and all of that, so, and things like that. So somebody's not liking what I'm saying about my videos being censored and how the views are being, controlled, the view counts. So I had to publicly talk about that on Google Plus, and so I was trying to access my blog today, and I was having some difficulties. I had to use some indirect routes to do that. And I know that it's coming from people who are offended by some of the comments that I've made lately. But as long as my blog exists, I will continue to blog, to act as a blogger, to write about things that affect me personally, and that affect my community, and that affect my children, and that affect, us as a human beings. I will continue to do that. I will also continue to expose corruption in Canada. It's absolutely necessary to do that. Now, that may make me a prophet of doom, but if that's the way it is, that's the way it is. So not all of my videos are going to be about, negative things like racism and things like that. But sometimes when you have these things to report, you have to report it. So please keep posted, and keep reading my blog, and keep checking me out in Google Plus. If Google itself does not block me permanently, then I would have to take up a protest against Google, which I'm already doing online, because it's blocking my videos, and nobody believes the count. You know, I have like almost 360,000 views on Google Plus, and my videos are on Google Plus. So how the hell are you going to tell me the views for my videos are going down? It doesn't make sense. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure this out. Just do the math. Something is wrong somewhere. Stop censoring my videos. Because we know Google works with these intelligence agencies, and Google cooperates with governments and stuff like that. But unless you're doing something illegal on the internet, you know, if you're just exercising freedom of speech, and if you're just doing these things, that's going to benefit society and benefit you and benefit the rest of society, because we want to live in a society that everyone is treated equally, everyone has equal rights, and those are the things that I'm pushing for. Why the hell are you censoring my videos? Just leave it alone. So I had to be outspoken on that. So I know that some people didn't like that. Well, and that's too bad. So what I'm saying is that keep tuning in, and continue to read my blog, and continue to watch my videos, and I will keep reporting on what I know as far as racism in Canada. I definitely will be keeping on top of this story, even though it's a local story. It's not a story on a national level in regards to this local city official, but it's absolutely necessary, because you can see where corruption starts from the bottom all the way to the top. Okay, and so it's absolutely necessary to report on these things. This is Valerie Guillaume, and I'm reporting once again in regards to human rights abuse in Canada. I'm also available for comments, so please contact me in regards to these videos, and you can also post your comments online, and I will certainly try to, the ones that I think are appropriate, I will, you know, I appreciate them, and of course I can always do with your support. So this is all I have to say for now. I urge you to continue to watch my videos and read my blog, and in regards to this local story that I'm reporting on these Toronto city officials, there is absolutely more to report, so stay tuned and you will be reading more about them, because I am absolutely convinced that they should be removed from their positions, and one of my jobs right now is to gather the evidence publicly and let the public decide, because sometimes that's what's necessary. You may not get justice in the court, but you may get it in the court of public opinion, because sometimes people just have had enough of corruption and abuse of power by people who are entrusted with that, and they abuse it, and sometimes the ones who are abusing it wants to continue in their position as if we're idiots and we can't recognize what's good and what's bad. So people who do that should be kicked out, and somebody else should replace them, basically, and that's what I'm pushing for. So this is Valerie Guillaume, and this is all I have to report for now.